so without further ado, we have so much to learn today, and I want to just dive right in. So welcome to our class on how to mix any color. To get the most out of this training, I strongly encourage you turn off your phone, turn off the notifications. If you're in a place where you can close the door and just limit your distractions. Atelier training is no joke training, and especially today when I'm teaching you, it requires a lot of focus, and you are going to need to have your A game attention here to really get the most out of this training today. I also encourage you to, grab paper and pencil to take some notes. And then, if whatever helps you learn. For me, I love teaching with a hot cup of coffee, and I love learning with a hot cup of coffee or tea. I just like to cuddle things when I'm learning, like a hot beverage. If that's you, whatever gets you in your best learning space and your best headspace, take a minute now and prepare to learn a lot of information over the next hour. Okay, if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them in the chat. I do try to answer as many questions as I can during the class, but also if a question is a little bit of a tangent from what we're covering today, then I will circle back to it at the end of class. And I promise that I will answer all of your questions at the very end if I don't get to them, during the class. And again, if you're finding these trainings valuable, please go ahead and share them with your friends and family. Anybody with the registration link that you received to sign up for this class can sign up for these classes. Our vision and our goal at the School of Atelier Arts is to bring as much knowledge to as many people in the world about visual literacy, about drawing and painting realistically as we can. And so we're so excited that you're here. And if you have some friends that would probably like this too, please go ahead and share with them. Okay. I'm getting a question from Tamara. Will we be able to print off these slides? No, I don't think I have those as a handout. But Tamara, if you remind me at the end of the class, I can actually upload them and have them sent out to you, I think, or you can email me for them and I can send them to you that way. Thank you. Okay, so hello, everybody. My name's Mandy, and I love color theory of all the things in drawing and painting. I mean, I love drawing and painting realistically. There's so much joy to be had in all the nuances of, this particular skill set. But color theory is my jam. I freaking love color so much. I love that, you can learn just a little bit about color and you can start seeing colors that you've never seen before. And that's my goal for all of you today, is that you walk away from this class and you start looking around you wherever you are, whether that's Germany or Norway or New York City or sunny Florida or wherever you are, and that you can start understanding the nuance of the color around you, and you can start really seeing it in a way like you've never seen before. Okay. Okay, so I like to ask a few questions when I start the classes because I like to gauge where the students are as a group. We have people from all over the world joining us. We have so many of you here. And so I like to ask a few questions. Please feel free to answer me in the chat or share a little bit about your own experience with these questions. So my first question for you is, have you ever tried to mix a color and it just came out like a muddy mess? Like you were trying to make this really beautiful color that you saw somewhere like out in nature, or maybe you were doing a master copy, or you were trying to find the perfect pink color for your home, whatever it was, and you just couldn't get it. It was just like a muddy mess. I'm getting some of courses in the chat. Like, yeah, that's definitely happened to me. And if you want to share like specifically what your experience was, I'd love to, get an understanding. So was it, you were working on a painting, where you, just felt inspired? You just saw a color and you're like, that's such a great color. I want to see if I can make that color. And then what about this? This is a common question I get from a lot of students. I have students all over the world writing me every day, working with the School of Atelier Arts, writing our staff all the time, being like, how come this color wheel says one thing and this color wheel says another? And what does this color wheel even mean? Does this sound like you? Are you confused? Like the color wheels don't all make sense, that every time you see another color wheel, it seems like it doesn't make sense with the other color wheels that you've seen? Does that happen to you? In some of my other workshops, I've really talked about how atelier training is a lost set of skills. It nearly went extinct in the 1980s, and there were just a very small number of ateliers throughout the world saving this training for not, from extinction. And the result of that is that because atelier training and what is known about painting color in the Western world, at least, was nearly lost, it created a vacuum for anybody with half-baked ideas to fill in. And, I'm a licensed art teacher, and I'm pointing at myself right here. Before I found atelier training, I was using the wrong color wheels, inaccurate color wheels that actually didn't make any sense because I didn't know better. Okay. And so when I talk about there being a lot of bad information out there, the reason the color wheels don't make sense to you isn't because you're a dum-dum, because you are not. It's because they're bad. Okay. Not all, but many of them are. So we're going to talk about why that is and how you can discover which ones to reference and which ones to avoid to make sure that you aren't getting lost in this mess and lost in this confusion. Okay, and I'm seeing, in response to my last question about if you ever tried to mix a color and it didn't work out, somebody in the chat saying that they come out more pastel, and maybe they're using white incorrectly. We're going to talk about this. It's a really common problem. Okay. All right. So does this sound like you? Are you like, okay, there's red. I'm going to get my red paint out. I'm going to put my red paint on my palette, and okay, but it's not the right red. And what do I do now? Right? Like, it looks red, I have red, but this red is not looking like the red that I'm supposed to have. What do I do? Like, red's a primary color, right? How do you mix a right red if it's a primary color? So have you ever gotten stuck on this where you're trying to paint a color and you're like, okay, it's blue and I have blue, but this blue isn't the right blue, or this yellow isn't the right yellow? I see someone's having a hard time connecting. I'm just going to give them some advice here. We'll tell Susan to try leaving and re-enter. Okay. All right. So we have just so much going on, right? Like, there's so many pitfalls in color, and more so than any other part of learning how to draw and paint realistically, bad color theory is so the worst culprit of everything that's out there. And thanks, Cherry, for helping out our other students. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. So here's what's coming up. We're going to talk about the three major elements of color and why they matter. All right. All right. And then we're going to not only learn how to mix any color, we're actually going to practice it right here. And don't worry, you don't need to get out your paints and palettes. We're going to play a little game that's going to help you learn how to mix colors online with me today. So we're actually going to I'm going to teach you about the three elements of color, and then we are actually going to practice them together in this class before you leave, just to make sure that you know how to apply these concepts. So I've taught some color theory workshops before. Maybe some of you have taken, we have a free color theory workshop at www.schoolofatelierarts on our homepage. You can sign up for it. And so some of you may have seen that class. We're going to start with some of that information, and then we're going to practice it and apply it way more than we did in that class. So if you've seen that class, this is going to have a little bit of repeat information in the beginning, but we're going to go deeper in this class, and we're going to practice it in a different way. So just a heads up on that. Okay, and then at the very end today, again, these workshops, these free workshops that I'm giving this week, and this is our last one, they're all part of our launch for the Atelier Painting Bootcamp. And I'm so excited to finally launch this bootcamp. I have students who have been asking me for years, Mandy, please teach classes regularly where I can, when are you going to run an online atelier, Mandy? Well, here it is. And so we're going to talk about this at the end of today's class, and how if you are trying to learn how to draw and paint realistically, and especially paint realistically, that this bootcamp might be just what you're looking for. Okay, so why is color mixing so hard? Like, why are we making those messes on our campus? Like, what is it about color that makes things so difficult, right? And, I've been there, I've had these frustrations, all these stories you're telling me in the chat right now about how it went for you and, the difficulties you faced with mixing color. Like, I've definitely been there. I was a licensed art teacher doing my best to try to teach other people how to paint. And I didn't know how to mix colors and I did not know the correct color theory. All right. So my color work used to look more like this. So, I was always interested in realism. I was trying to paint realistically, but you can see that I'm just making a lot of best guesses here. Like I didn't really know, like I know a donut isn't blue, but if it has a shadow, is it blue? And this was me earnestly trying to look at something and paint it as realistically as I possibly could, right? And you can see that there's kind of this cartoony effect. Like, you can get in the right ballpark, but then what about the actual right color? Right? What is that? And how do you get there? So you can see that overall this work is what we call chromatic. And don't worry if you don't know that word right now, you will know that word by the end of this class. And a little cartoony, also a little chalky. And that's a word for when we're adding too much white. I saw someone earlier in the chat talking about how their paintings get chalky or a little too pastel-y sometimes. And that's because we don't have control over our values, over our white. So don't worry, we're going to talk about all these concepts. Okay, but then I discovered Atelier training. So let me know in the chat, who here has heard of Atelier training before? Is it just this week you've learned about it? Is it just this minute you've learned about it? Have you heard it kind of floating around in the community a little bit, but are curious to learn more? Let me know what your experience is with Atelier training. Because I didn't know Atelier training existed. And then one day I discovered Atelier training existed and my mind was blown. I was like, are you kidding me? I felt like someone told me that, like, sent me an owl from Hogwarts telling me I could be a magical person, that I could be a wizard. Because here's this thing that I wanted to do my entire life. I had wanted to draw and paint realistically my entire life. And there was a period in my life where I just felt like, oh, I must not have it, right? Whatever it is. Because I was trying so hard to draw and paint realistically, and my work didn't look anything like what I was seeing in museums. And then I discovered that Atelier training existed, which is basically the schools that people train in that are really specialized. They're really small. They nearly went extinct in the last century, but they still exist today. And if you're lucky enough to find one, they can actually teach you all these skills that you've, like, if you want to draw and paint realistically, you need to go to an atelier. That's where you're going to learn efficiently hundreds and hundreds of years of inherited artistic information. So Leonardo da Vinci did not wake up one day and, like, poof, there's a Mona Lisa. That did not happen. Da Vinci trained in an atelier for 10 years, okay? And his training that he underwent is not so very different from the way people are trained today, all right? And in a real atelier. Unfortunately, because this training fell out of favor, largely speaking, you have to look really hard and know what you're looking for in order to find a quality atelier that can actually teach you these skills. But lucky for you, you found one and you're training with an atelier trained person right now, right this very minute. Okay, so now my paintings look more like this, right? So you can see the before and the after. There's so much knowledge that goes from taking your painting to, okay, I guess, like, it's fine, to, okay, this is what I intended to paint. And I now have the skill set that I need to make paintings with intention and have them come out the way that I want them to. The way that I see them up here is how you can paint, because it's really just a disconnect between where your skill set is now and what your vision is for your paintings. And atelier training, I kind of consider it like you're wearing a tool belt. It gives you like a hammer and nails and a saw, all the tools that you need to build whatever you want. And you can build anything you want once you have these skills. But the key thing here is you'll never not be able to create the paintings that you intend to because you didn't have the skill. So in my opinion, atelier training is the most creative endeavor in the visual arts because it allows you choice. Nothing is a default. You actually have complete creative control when you have the skill set to determine from the very first brush stroke what your painting is going to look like. Okay, and I see some of you in the chat, talking about like, oh, I knew that Atelier training kind of existed, but now I'm like really getting it, right? For me, it was hard to believe that it actually existed, right? Like, you mean there's actually, for real, can they teach me? Because, I had so many art teachers. I took so many art classes. I've always loved art. I wanted this so much from a very young age. And when I wasn't getting better, I thought that I was the problem, but I wasn't the problem. The problem was that I didn't have teachers that had the skill set that I was looking for. All right. So it's super important that you understand that people can only teach you what they know. And if they do not have these skills, they cannot possibly teach you these skills. And because, again, atelier training is relatively rare, it fell out of favor for a long period of time, you have to really look to find atelier trained people that can actually teach you these skills. Okay, so today, of all the atelier training, there's so much to atelier training, but today we're really focused on color theory and how to mix any color. That's the goal. I'm having a hard time saying words today. That is the goal for today. All right, so in order to paint realistically, you need to know how to mix colors using an atelier method, and that's what we're going to learn now. All right. So you want to mix a color, but you can't just like put a bunch of paint on a palette and expect to be able to mix the color that you need. There are things that you need to understand about color. And in particular, there are three main pillars of every color that you see out there. And we're going to learn about those, and then we're going to learn how to practice them. Okay, so the very first pillar of color theory is value. And value is just how light or how dark a color is. Now, there's lots of different value scales out there. This is part of the confusion, right? So there's many different kinds of value scales. There's 5-step value scales. There's 10-step value scales. I use a 9-step value scale. And if you sign up for the Atelier Painting Bootcamp, I go into depth as to why I use a 9-step value scale. But we don't have time for that in this class because we're trying to cover all the elements of color. But there's a specific reason and choice that a lot of atelier trained people use a 9-step value scale. All right. And, between 1 and 9, you're just trying to organize the colors that you're seeing. So, for example, if we look at this color on the screen, all right, and we're trying to just evaluate how light or dark it is, what number would you give this color that you see, that little brown square? Like, is it really, really light? Is it a 1? Is it really, really dark? Is it a 9? Or is it somewhere in between? So I really encourage everybody, even if you're not one of those people that likes to type, put some guesses in here because this is a huge part of the learning process. All right. So by actually forcing yourself to make a guess, writing it down and submitting it, you're going to learn more than if you just try to do it in your head. So I strongly, strongly encourage everybody, just give me a number. Thank you. Awesome participation. All right, I'm seeing 4s, 5s, 6s. Some people are hedging their bets like a 4 to 5, 5 to 6. That's totally fine. You can use 4.5 if you want, right? if that's your guess. Okay, so excellent. So happy to see you guys taking your learning seriously, and because this is key. It's about doing the work in atelier training. You want to learn these skills, you got to do the work, and today the work means putting our guesses in the chat. Okay, now some of you said 4, and that's not a terrible guess, but it's a little bit on the light side. And one trick you can do, and I say this with a caveat of everybody's screens are a little different. Some people's screens are going to be a little lighter. Some people's screens are going to be a little darker. So if you guessed anywhere from 4 to 6, congratulations, you are on the right track. All right. And it looks like most of us are in that range. So that's awesome. We have a fairly good understanding there. There is going to be some variation because we're working digitally and what your screen's doing. But a way to check your work, there's a technique that atelier trained artists use, and it's called squinting. Now, some of us might be like, yeah, Mandy, I know how to squint. No big, I'm not an idiot. I can squint. But there's a specific kind of squint that will help you more than other kinds of squints. All right. And when you're looking at value, what you're trying to do is only think about how light or dark a color is. It's easy to get distracted, especially if you have a really like a neon pink, right? It's that pink is so intense and crazy that it's easy to get distracted by the pink and forget that you're thinking about values. And so this particular kind of squint that I'm about to teach you how to do is a way to help take the distraction of a really obnoxious color away and to focus just on the value. So here's how we do it. We close our eyes as tight as we possibly can, like the way little kids do when they think that you can't see them if they just close their eyes, like, really make them as tight as you possibly can. And then we're going to just barely open them until you are looking through your eyelashes. Okay, so if you don't see that blurry eyelash blur, then you're too far open. All right, so you're squinting as hard as you possibly can, and then you're just barely opening so that you're looking through your eyelashes. And I think that many of you will find that the color looks just a little bit darker than you thought it would. All right, so from the way it is on my screen, I'm seeing it as like 5.5, possibly even 6. Okay. Now, again, there's some variations in the screens, but take a minute now, squint, using the new squint. Excellent. I see some people seeing it a little bit darker now, right? So it's a way to take the brown, this idea of brown, out of our heads and just think about it just as a pure value. By looking through our eyelashes, it like dissolves some of the color away. It's kind of like a cheat sheet. It's like the early version of if you take a picture on your phone and then change it to grayscale, right? That's what squinting like that will do for you. It's like the 1500s version of turning your picture to black and white on your iPhone. Okay, great. Now, here's the thing. You just learned some really important things. These are enormously important things. You have an idea about how to evaluate the value of a color. You practiced the color. You got feedback from an Atelier trained person, and you learned a technique that most people don't know for learning how to see the value in this color. Now, imagine if you practice this, several times a week with an Atelier trained person. How much more accurate is your color going to get? So today, obviously, we have an hour-long class. I'm going to cover these 3 concepts with you. But if you really want to master them, you need to practice them, but you need to practice them in a way where you're getting feedback from an Atelier trained person, because you can't learn how to see better unless you're getting feedback from somebody who can see more than you, right? Like if you were to go ask your neighbor, who presumably does not have Atelier training, what's the value? Is their feedback really going to help you if they don't know better? Right? So, this is just one example of why it's so important to learn. If you're trying to learn realism skills at a really high level, you need to train with someone that has them at a really high level. Okay, so let's try again. All right, so here's another color. And again, it's super important. Make the effort, give me a guess in the chat. It holds you accountable and it'll help you learn faster. All right, so what is the value of this blue that we now see on the screen? And, I encourage you to make a guess with your eyes open and then check your work by squinting, that new squint technique that we now know. Where do we feel this value is? I'll give people a few seconds here to get their thoughts in line. And I mean, it's okay. You don't have to give an immediate answer either. If you need a second to think about it, that's perfectly legitimate. All right. Okay, Sherry has a really good point. She was saying, I was trying to compare to the grayscale on my screen and I don't have the paper version. This is actually like a whole side tangent that I'm about to go on, but I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible. But different media can get lighter and darker than other media. So for example, if you have a value scale that you made with pencil, the darkest 9 is going to be a lot lighter than if you made that same value scale with charcoal, because charcoal can get darker than a pencil can. All right. And so that leads to something called compression of values, which is something that we cover in the painting boot camp. It's a whole class all on its own. But just know for now, while we are trying to give you a big overview of color, that if you have a printed value scale, your darkest dark is going to look different than the darkest dark that we can get on a screen. All right. Okay, so I see lots of great guesses, anywhere from 6, 7, 8, and 9. So we're definitely in the right part of the value scale. All right. Now, here's the thing. It's hard to forget that it's blue. And when we think that it's blue, it tricks us into thinking it's lighter. So if you're looking at this color with the mindset of what value is this blue, that's going to trick you into being a little bit lighter, because whenever we have an idea of, that's called the hue, blue is the hue. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but it distracts us from the value. But when you do like the little squinty thing, we're pretty solidly in a 7.5, 8 territory. Okay. Now, again, there's going to be some variation on the screen, but if you saw it as a different value, if you saw it as darker or lighter than that, I want you to squint now and see if you can see what I'm telling you is there. So we're looking in a 7.5, 8 range. So if you felt like it was a 6, see if you can understand why I'm saying it's darker than a 6. If you thought it was a 9, see if you can understand why I'm saying it's lighter than a 9. Okay, you guys are doing incredibly well. And this isn't about getting it right or wrong. This is about learning how to train your eye to see better. All right, and that's what Atelier training is. People think, oh, if I just know how to move the paint in a certain direction, then I can paint realistically. And that's not how it works. It's 98% training your eye to see better, to see differently than you can see right now. And the rest of it is learning to control your materials and execution. But it's about your eye. All right. Thanks, Annette. I'm with you too. All right. So excellent. All right. So now here's another one. And this one's tricky. Remember when I said when you have a really bright color, it can distract you from what the true value is. So I want you to keep that in mind while you're looking at this color when you're trying to decide what value it is. So on this yellow, what value do you give this yellow? And again, I strongly encourage the close your eyes as hard as you can and then just barely open and look through your eyelashes. And again, I strongly encourage everybody to put a guess in. You'll learn way more putting a guess in than, because we all do this, right? Like, oh yeah, I think it's this number, right? And then you hear the answer and you're like, yeah, I said that. It was close, right? But when you write it down, then you can reference it, right? And you can be like, okay, I was off by a little bit, I was off by a lot. It gives you a data point to compare to. Okay. So I see lots of good guesses here, and you'll see, I want everybody to look in the chat. We have a much wider range in value guesses on this color than we did on the other two. Why is that? It's because the chroma, the intensity of this color is so bright that it tricks us into thinking that it's brighter than it really is. Okay, so for the most part, people in the atelier or when they're learning atelier training, they will see a color like this and they will think that the value is actually much lighter than it actually is. Now, sometimes too, atelier training is like, I told you, okay, don't go off the left side of the road if you're driving, right? Like don't think it's too bright. But sometimes when in atelier training, what happens is we learn that and then we start veering too far the other way and we start thinking it's darker than it really is, right? And so to me, I see some guesses that are too light and some guesses that are too dark. And that makes me very, very happy because none of you would have been able to see that well 2 slides ago. All right, so you're already learning something enough to compensate for a mistake that you suspect you might be making. And this is amazing. This is such good learning here. You're making me very happy. Okay, so what is the number? What is the number? I would say that this is a solid 4.5. All right, I'm gonna go with a 4.5. I see some people have 4.5. Some people that were going for 2, it's because you're getting distracted by how intense this color is. When we see a really chromatic color, it tricks us into thinking it's brighter than it really is. Those of you who guessed a little bit too dark, it's because you were learning from a past mistake, and that's commendable also. So take a minute now and see, do the squinty trick, squint your eyes as tight as you can and just barely look through your eyelashes and see if you can see why I'm telling you this is a 4.5. All right, and you can see the learning process here, right? Like I'm giving you some information. I'm asking you to give me a guess. I'm giving you feedback on your guess, and I'm giving you techniques to help you make better guesses. All right, so this is Atelier training in a nutshell. This is what we do all day, every day in the Atelier. This is what I teach, every critique in the painting bootcamp. All right, and it's exciting that people are like, yes, I can see it now. All right, it makes a difference. This is why you need to train with someone that has eyes that are trained at a higher level than you. All right, so we're gonna go, oh my goodness, we're already halfway through the class and I have so much to teach you. All right. Okay, so the next pillar, so the first element of color we said was value, how light or dark a color is. The next element of color is the chroma. Sometimes people describe chroma as intensity. Those words tend to be interchangeable. I try to be consistent in my use, and so I try to mostly use chroma as much as possible unless the student is asking me using a different term. All right, so here's the thing. There is a magic color that is a no color, and that is what we call that is a true neutral. So most people would describe, like the layperson would describe a true neutral as a grayish color, but it's not a red gray, it's not a yellow gray, it's not a green gray or a blue gray or an orange gray. It's a gray that doesn't look like it's any of the other colors, and that is our true neutral. All right, so the opposite of a true neutral is our most chromatic pigments, right? So think of stop sign red. It's like, how do you get more red than stop sign red? It's the most chromatic red, that we tend to see in our day-to-day lives. And that yellow on the previous slide was a really chromatic yellow, right? It wasn't a neutralized yellow, it was a chromatic yellow. All right, and then just like on the value scale, we have steps in between. Now, in the Atelier, I'm the only one that I know of that I've seen. I think I invented this, but you never know. You collect information for so many places. But I'm like, well, if we have a value scale, we should have a chroma scale, right? Be consistent. So this is a chroma scale that I came up with that I created to help my students understand that there's degrees of chroma and degrees of neutrality. Now, I start students off with a 1 through 3 because a value scale, most students have a little bit more experience with a value scale. A chroma scale, because I made this, and to my knowledge, I don't know of another one, this is new information that most people haven't seen before. And so I like to start with a 1, 2, or 3, and then as you train with me, then we'll eventually go to a 9-step chroma scale. But when you're first learning this concept, I found keep it simple, 1, 2, 3. All right. Now, with this scale, the 1 is for the pure chroma note. The 3 is for like if it's just a little bit of color, so a green gray. Think of the 3 as like a orange gray, green gray, blue gray. That's what the 3 is for. And the 2 is somewhere in between those two extremes, right? So the 1 is really light chromatic. The 3 is the least chromatic or the most neutralized that you can get before reaching a true neutral. And the 2 is somewhere in between. So are there any questions about this chroma scale that I'm presenting to you? Okay, because guess what we're about to do with our chroma scale. All right, so here's your first color, all right? If you had to choose a 1, 2, or 3, is it really intense? Is this a chromatic color? Is it a really, really neutralized, almost neutral color, or is it somewhere in between? And again, I strongly encourage everybody put their guesses in the chat. It holds you accountable and it helps with your learning. Okay. All right, so this is a pretty chromatic color. If I had to pick a 1, 2, or 3, it gets a 1 from me. All right, it's pretty chromatic. There is a whole side tangent here that I'm going to try to explain briefly because we still have so much content to cover and I don't want to use up too much time on this. But the thing is that we have more chromatic paints today than we did 100 years ago. And 100 years ago, we had more chromatic paints than we had 500 years ago because of science, right? So if anybody has ever heard of the color like cadmium red, for example, cadmiums didn't exist until the 1800s, okay? And they are a brighter, more intense red than the way people were able to make a red paint before cadmiums were invented. And today, like car paint companies and makeup companies, they spend so much money developing new pigments that are even more chromatic than any other pigment that we've ever had before. So it continues to evolve in this incredible way, especially with reds, because car companies and makeup companies are really into red. You'll notice if you go to a paint tube store, because basically the paint manufacturers, they wait for the car companies to, invent their new colors, and then they'll start making pigment with it, more or less. But you'll find that not a popular car color is like a neon coral. And it is the bane of my existence because I love painting orange flowers and I want like this neon orangey coral color to paint flowers with. And it's like you can have a really chromatic red and really chromatic yellow, but if you go for like that chromatic coral orangey red color, it's way less chromatic than your choices for red or orange are. So I wish those car companies would start making coral cars. Hot coral, neon coral cars. Okay, so this is a 1, it's intense, but keep in mind 100 years from now, we might say that this is neutral because we have pigments that are so much more intense than this that by comparison, this is not very bright. So it's all relative to the pigments we have access to at the time. In this case, it's relevant to this little chroma scale that I've made for you guys. Okay, so here's your next one. Again, give me your guesses in the chat. Is this super chromatic? Is it not very chromatic at all? Just a little bit of color in there, or is it somewhere in between? And definitely put your guess in the chat. Like, it's good for learning. We're here to learn. Might as well go all the way. All right. Okay, so I see some pretty solid guessing in here. And yes, those of you who said 3, you are correct. This is a color that is just a little bit of color outside of neutral. All right, so if I had to think about, this is actually a red, by the way, and this is where it gets tricky. You try to tell a student that doesn't have Atelier training that this is red, and they will fight you tooth and nail. Like, there's no way, Mandy, that this color is red, but it is. And once you start practicing seeing neutralized colors, you'll start to understand why this color is a red. And this is what we're going to talk about for our 3rd pillar. But just so you know, this is a red, all right? But it's barely a red. It's a red that's just a tiny bit red, largely neutralized, and so it is a 3. Okay, and now we have one more to look at. So give me your guesses on this one. Is this color a 1, 2, or 3? And also, if you feel like guessing, tell me, is it red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? Okay. Lots of goodness. Oh, I like the person that put 2.5. That's good. But yeah, I would say largely 2. Okay, so this is in between. Now, eventually you can get so nuanced with this that you have a 9-step chroma scale, and then we really get into it. But chroma is the one that students have the least experience with understanding and practicing. So I like to start with a 3-step value scale. And then as you gain more experience, then we'll go to a 5-step and then a 9-step. All right. So this is a red and it is a 2. Okay, now before we go on to the next stage of our training today, does anybody have any questions about chroma and neutrals? Is anybody like, Mandy, are you sure that this is this? Or I don't understand why this is this? Okay. Oh, this is a great question from Chris. Will you explain how to mix a neutral? Oh my goodness. All right. Yes, I can. I'll give a short explanation for now because we don't have a lot of time. in the painting bootcamp, I have a whole video that shows you exactly how to mix neutrals. Here's the thing, there's many different ways that you can approach making a neutral. The way that I teach how to make a neutral is what's called, and this sounds crazy, is a chromatic neutral. And some of you might be like, what the heck, Mandy? Is it chromatic or neutral? They're opposites. How can you possibly have a chromatic neutral? Like, how are you mixing a neutral that you call chromatic neutral? That seems insane to me, right? But here's the deal. If you take some red, some yellow, and some blue, those are all very chromatic colors, and you mix them together, and they cannot be equal amounts red, yellow, and blue, because some pigments are more potent than other pigments. Usually you need a lot more yellow than you need of red, and you need a lot less blue than you need of red and yellow. But if you combine your most chromatic red, your most chromatic yellow, and your most chromatic blue into a pile, it'll be quite dark, but you can get a neutral. Now, it's really hard to see a color when a color is either really, really light or really, really dark. So when people are mixing a neutral, especially when they're learning how to mix a neutral, I have them add white to it, which brings up the value of the paint and makes it easier to see the color. All right. You'll notice that on these chroma practices that I gave you like a middle value color. It's not super light. It's not super dark. That's because the lighter your color gets and the darker the color gets, the harder it is to see how chromatic it is. So when you're trying to mix a true neutral, I have students add white into there to make sure that they can see the color really clearly. All right, so there's a great question in the chat. Is a pain gray a neutral? It can be. Usually pain gray is a little bit on the blue side. Pain gray is often what the number 3 on the blue prong of the color wheel would be. So it's pretty neutral, but it's not a true neutral. It's a little bit of a blue neutral. Okay. And again, I go into this in depth. We have so much to cover in this class, and these are really great questions, and I want to answer all of them, but I want to make sure that everybody walks away today fully understanding the 3 elements of color. And I'm happy for those of you who want to join the boot camp. I promise I can give you lectures and lectures and lectures on neutral in that space. But for today, I want to make sure that we cover everything we need to cover so that we have a firm foundation to work from. Okay, so the last element of color is hue, and hue is what's often known as Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. This seems pretty straightforward, right? But who here by now suspects that I'm going to make this a lot harder for you than just red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple? I think you all know me better than that right now. Okay, so here's the deal with hue. Well, let's practice a couple. Actually, before we get into this, crap, I don't remember if I included this other part in these slides or not. All right, we'll practice first, and then if we have time, I'm going to give you a little side lecture on hue as well. All right, so let's talk just about hue. All right, so here's your first color. Is this a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? And definitely take the time to write it down in the chat. You'll learn way more that way. I can't tell you after like years of teaching, high school students in the pandemic online, how lovely it is to see so many people participating in this class. Those of you who are our teachers out there, I know you're feeling me right now, but like it's just bringing me so much joy to see how engaged everybody is. Okay, so yes, we have green. Okay, so this is a green. Now you'll notice that this isn't any green, this is a dark green. And the darker the color goes, the more difficult it can be to see a color. All right. Now here's a little thing that actually, I don't know if I cover this in later slides. So we'll pause here for now. And then if it doesn't get covered in my next few slides, I don't remember if I put it in, then I'll talk about it. All right. Okay, viridian is a legitimate way to describe the green, yes. So often when we're talking about hues, by the way, these other words, so Viridian is often a bluey green as opposed to a yellowy green, right? So viridian is just a way to talk about the hue. I have so much I want to tell you about, but let's focus on this now and we'll get to the other parts. All right. All right. So what about this color? Is this a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? And this one's a lot harder. And definitely put this answer in the chat. You might be surprised. Yeah, this one's a lot harder. The guesses are more all over the place. Yellows, greens, oranges. Oh, I love, Bonnie, that you put a neutral orange. So Bonnie's recognizing that this isn't a chromatic color, that it's a slightly neutralized color. Okay, but it's not an orange, unfortunately. I know this sounds crazy. Ooh, chartreuse. Yeah, I suppose it is at least, I've always been confused at what color chartreuse actually is. I should look it up before I incorrectly describe it. Okay, so here's the thing. This color is actually yellow. And some of you may be like, but Mandy, I see green in there. Why isn't it green? I don't understand why it's green. And it's because when you darken yellow, it turns green. And a dark yellow and a neutralized yellow is actually a form of green. And when you get a lot of experience, if you really want to learn how to master your chroma and neutrals, if you just make a 9-step chroma scale from really chromatic to neutral with red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, it'll blow your mind. When you have enough experience mixing neutrals, you will learn that this is a yellow. And I wish there was a better way to help you understand why this is a yellow other than just telling you. But if you believe me, if I have earned your trust at this point where you can accept that what I'm telling you is true, then you'll start seeing it. And I know that's not like the nicest way to learn, but it's, what's that Pride and Prejudice line? It's a truth universally acknowledged that a dark yellow is a green. Sorry, I'm being a huge dork, but yes, yellow is when you neutralize it, and when it gets darker, it's a slight green. And Horst is saying, how do I darken yellow? You make it green. That's one way. Another way is if you mix up that true neutral and you add it to your yellow, it will darken it and neutralize it. And another way is you can start with a yellow pigment that is darker. So if you look at, say, a yellow ochre, it's still yellow. It's a darker yellow, but it's also more neutralized yellow. So it's like yellow is its own special magic color. It doesn't behave like any of the other colors. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. So Naveed's saying you can add the opposite of yellow. So we have time to go in the weeds? Okay. This class is just going to go over. There's just too much to tell you about. All right. So Naveed is saying, go add the opposites. The opposite of yellow is purple, right? Well, what is purple made out of? Red plus blue, right? So you have yellow and you add red plus blue. Oh, wait, isn't that the chromatic neutral I was just telling you about? Yellow, red, and blue. All right. So adding the opposite color is just another way of creating a chromatic neutral, because whatever color you start with, if you're starting with red, opposite of red is green. What is green? Yellow and blue. You're adding it to red. Ta-da! Chromatic neutral. Okay. The reason I choose to have students mix a chromatic neutral is to help them understand that all three of those colors are in almost every single color that you paint. There's very few things that you paint in this world that are a pure chroma note. And if they are not a pure chroma note, they are slightly neutralized. And if they are slightly neutralized, they have a red, a yellow, and a blue. Okay. So like my shirt is a blue, but it has red and yellow in it, and it's dark in value. All right. It's not like a chromatic blue. It's chromatic-ish, but it's not a pure chroma note. All right. We're really getting into it. Oh, thanks, Elena. you know, it's my job as an art educator to take something that is difficult and try to break it down and try to simplify it, right? That's why you know, we've been talking for almost an hour now and we've had dozens of slides, right? Because if you take a concept and we break it apart, if we really understand what value is in a deep way, not just in a superficial way, if we really understand what chroma is in a deep way, if we really understand what hue is in a deep way, then we really get to start to understand what colors are and what they can do. Like, it's magical. I hope that all of you, when you leave today, this class, that you can look out at colors and understand them and see them, like truly see them, truly see their real value, right? Do your squinty trick. Truly see their real chroma and their real hue. Oh, thanks, Naveed. I'm glad you think color theory is so fun. I love it so much. Someone told me, one of my students told me just this week, she sent me a message and she was like, you're like the Johnny Appleseed of color theory. And I'm like, yes, I will take that title. I will take that title. For those of you who aren't Americans, Johnny Appleseed is a folk hero where he took apple seeds and planted them all across the United States. And it's why we have so many bizarre kinds of apples in the United States. Yeah, tomorrow, I agree. It doesn't feel like we have an hour. I'm like, there's so much more I need to tell you. All right, we need to make this one quick because there's a lot to cover here. All right, so hue, what's this hue? Is it red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? All right, give me the things in your chat. Okay. Oh, and I love it. There's controversy brewing. A lot of people are saying blue. Elena's putting out a purple in there. Kathy's giving me a purple. All right, so there's bluish purple, right? Okay, I agree with this assessment. I would say overall it's more blue than purple. All right. But here's the thing, and I hope, buckle up. All right. Here's another thing that I can't wait to tell you about, and it's going to blow your mind. All right. In the Atelier world, when blue leans towards purple, we say that it's a warm blue, because a blue either leans towards green, which we consider to be the cool side, or red, which we consider to be the warm side. So a purpley blue, we would call a warm blue. However, and here's where it gets crazy, we could also say that it's a cold purple. A warm purple would be a reddy purple, but this is a bluey purple. So every color is both warm and cool. It just depends on what you're comparing it to. If I'm comparing it to blue, this is a warm blue. If I'm comparing it to purple, it's a cold purple. Huh? So this color is a warm blue and a cold purple. So you're all right. It just depends on how you want to describe it. But I would say it's more, if I had to say whether it was closer to blue or closer to purple, it's closer to blue. But you could describe it both ways and be legitimate. As long as you understand, right? You can't just go around saying this is this color and this is this color if you don't understand the underpinnings of what makes it that color. Okay. Oh, okay. I did include the slide. I wasn't sure if I did. Okay. So I kind of gave away the lead here, but every color is both a warm and a cool, right? So, you know, it doesn't matter which one you pick. If you look at this reddy purple on the bottom left, that is a warm purple or a cold red. It's both of those things. All right. We do have color theory worksheets at the School of Atelier Arts that have you practice this. There's like 50 worksheets there. Like you can go to School of Atelier Arts in our shop and you can purchase them there. If you really want to practice color theory and master what you're learning today, I encourage you to go check out those worksheets. And it'll give you practice because guess what? It has an answer key. So it's like me being over your shoulder telling you, yes, no, no, yes, this, that, right? Because you get that feedback through the answer key. So if you want to practice your color theory, I encourage you to check out those worksheets. Okay, so the red we talked about is a warm purple and a cold red. The orange, you know, it can be a cold orange or a warm, or sorry, a warm yellow or a cold orange. The yellow green is a warm green and a cold yellow. Right? All of these things are true, right? So there's really like, and again, I'm guilty of this. I'm a licensed art teacher. I taught for many years telling my students, oh, red, orange, yellow are warm colors and green, blue, purple are cold colors. And that's a lie. That is not true. That is not reality. Every color is a warm and a cool color. I'm going to have to go track down all those students and tell them I was a liar. Okay, so I want to practice all three elements together with all of you now. All right, so I hope you're ready to go into overtime because we still have a lot to cover. All right, this color, I want you to think of this color and I want you to ask yourself, what is the value on a 1 to 9 scale where 1 is the lightest and 9 is the darkest? What is the value? What is the chroma? Is this an intense color or not intense color? Is it a 1, 2, or 3? So 1 being the most chromatic, 3 being almost neutral. And what is the hue? Is this a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? It's one of those, and you have to pick one. All right, so we're looking at the color. I want you to think about your guesses. So value, chroma, hue. Excellent. All right, so you can put all three guesses together and then we're going to go through them one by one. So I'll give you like a minute to get your guesses because there's a lot of thinking to be done. Here, I'm going to put the color back up. So value, chroma, and hue. Give me your best guesses. First number value, second number chroma, third input the hue. Excuse me. I have a terrible case of hiccups. I'm just so excited about color theory. I gave myself hiccups, I guess. Excellent. I see Sonia chiming in. All right. Cassie, Maria, and Mark. So many people in this class right now. So great to see all of you. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the value. What is the value of this? Oh, sorry. What is the value? I see lots of guesses. A lot of people are giving me 5s, 6s, 7s. So I'm going to say, when I'm squinting and the way it looks on my screen right now, I'm going to give this a solid 6. All right. Now, if you guessed somewhere between 5, 6, and 7, you're in good shape. All right. Depending on what your screen's doing. But we're going to say largely that this is a 6. All right. It's a little darker than some of you are thinking. It's a little lighter than some of you are thinking. Okay. What about the chroma? Is this a 1, 2, or 3? Is it super chromatic? Is it a little bit chromatic? And I'm seeing lots of 2 guesses in here. I'm seeing some 3 guesses. I'm just scrolling back up. All right, so it's pretty evenly split between 2s and 3s, but this is quite neutralized. Like this is definitely more of a 3 than a 2. All right. You could make an argument for 2.5, but it's pretty neutralized. And do you know how I know it's neutralized? Is because it's kind of hard to tell what the hue might be. So is this a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple? And if you really want to get fancy, is it a warm or cool version of the color that you're telling me? And it can only be warm or cool if you tell me what you're comparing it to, right? Because every color is warm and cool. So it would have to be, for example, a warm blue or a cold red or, something like that. You have to give me the hue and the warm cool. You can't just say warm or cool because, yeah, of course you're right, because every color is warm and cool, as you now know. Okay. All right, so lots of guesses. Some people are giving me reds, some people are giving me oranges, but I would say this is an orange. This is a neutralized orange. And you know how I can tell is if we go back to the chroma stage, do you see how close it is to this 3 here? So it's a really neutralized orange. And anytime you see a color, I've had people ask all the time, right? There's so many color questions out there. Like, where does brown go on the color wheel? How come it's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple? Well, brown is on the color wheel. It's orange. Brown, almost all the variations of brown that we think of as brown are a neutralized orange. So brown is on the color wheel. It's just it's represented in a very neutralized way. Okay. And again, seeing hue is really difficult when we have low chroma. And if you're like, Mandy, there's no way that's an orange, I encourage you to mix up a neutral and start mixing a little bit of your neutral into your orange and see what happens to your orange. And a lot of neutrals come through experience. You know, skin tones are notoriously difficult to paint. They have a really challenging reputation to paint. And the reason is that skin tones are largely neutral, and they're just a little bit orange neutral, a little bit green neutral, a little bit, you know, red neutral. And so you're working within this really, really small, nuanced range to get a beautiful flesh tone in your paintings. So that's why skin tones can be so difficult to paint, is because they're largely very neutralized. Okay. We're just gonna keep going until we're out of things to teach you about today. But we'll go through this one quicker. So what's the value chroma hue of this color? Value 1 to 9, chroma 1 to 3, and hue red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So I'll give you like 10 seconds to spit out a guess for me, and then we'll give some answers. Okay, so I'm seeing some really good guesses, and there's actually some more visual tricks that are coming here. And again, this is why you want an Atelier trained person by your side, all right? So I'm seeing a lot of people say the value as a 2, or 3 or 4, like the values are kind of all over the place. But really the value is pretty much a 2, all right? Now, you're like, Mandy, before you said that people tend to err too light when they're looking at a color that says yellow, right? But this yellow is slightly neutralized. Oh, I'm giving away another answer. All right, this yellow is like a 2. It's slightly neutralized. And when we neutralize colors, we start to see them as darker than they actually are. All right. So when colors are really chromatic, we see them as lighter than they actually are. We get tricked into thinking they're brighter than they actually are. When they're neutralized, we get tricked into thinking they're darker than they actually are. So, you know, I think most of Atelier training is just learning all the ways that you might fall into holes, right? Because there's so many out there. But once you have a general awareness, like then you start seeing them. So if anybody guessed darker than a 2, I want you to like squint, do the squinty thing, close your eyes all the way down and then just barely open them, and you'll see that like you could maybe make an argument for a 2.5, but it's a pretty solid 2. Is anybody like, oh, my head hurts, Mandy, you're killing me? It's a lot. I've crammed a lot of information in your heads today. Yeah, my mind's blown too, Susan. And I do this every day, and sometimes like I still get tripped up by colors all the time. Like I'll find a color sometimes and I'm just like, I'm missing something, like something is tricking me and I haven't figured out what it is yet. All right. Okay, so we said the chroma is a 2. That's not a pure chroma note. It's not super neutralized. It's pretty easily a 2. And then the hue is yellow. All right. And it's not a particularly orangey yellow. It's not a particularly greeny yellow. So I'm just going to leave it as yellow. Oh, Naveed, the hue is a neutralized yellow with white. So when you say with white, what you're actually talking about is the value, right? So the hue, it doesn't matter how light or dark something is, the hue stays the same. Well, kind of. There's more exceptions to that rule, which we don't have time for today, because certain white pigments are warm and certain white pigments are cold. And if you add a whole bunch of whites and it's a cold white, it's going to shift the hue of your color when you add white to it. But largely speaking, generally speaking, it doesn't matter. Like the hue is unaffected by how light or dark something is in theory. In practice, depending on which white you're mixing with it, it can shift warm or cool a little bit. Okay, so who wants to learn more? I hope you're all like geeking out as much as I am because I love this stuff. Rena's like, me. Okay, so you basically have a few options today. You've just spent an hour and some change with me. Think about how much you've learned in the last hour and think about how far you could take your art if you were learning that much a couple times a week with an Atelier trained person. So, your choice is you can keep working on your own and piecing it together and, coming to free workshops as you find them. And like, that's great. Like that's something, but option number 2, if you really want to learn how to paint realistically, is to join us in Atelier Bootcamp. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the Bootcamp, what it looks like, how it works, and what you can expect to learn in there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just put up a link if you're interested. This page actually has a ton more information about the bootcamp as well. So it's a great resource if you still have some questions. I see some people saying, I love this. This is amazing, but I have zero money. We do run a scholarship program. So please write to scholarships at School of Atelier Arts and you can request a scholarship for our boot camps. So that is an option out there. Kristen, I'm not sure what you mean by audit the boot camp. So some of you might be familiar that with the partnership with the Florence Academy of Art, which is a university that I teach in, and I'm a professor in that. This is completely separate from that. This is this program, this Atelier Bootcamp, is like what this class is, except with a smaller number of people. We're on Zoom calls, and I'm critiquing your paintings. Well, I'm going to tell you all about it here, but it's separate from the university thing, if that's what you're thinking of. A lot of you are familiar with the partnership I have with the Florence Academy of Arts. If you're seeking a master's degree, I strongly encourage you to check that out. But this bootcamp is for anybody. There's no hoops to jump through other than signing up for the bootcamp if you want to learn how to draw and paint realistically. I'm getting a question in here, like how long is the boot camp? So it's an ongoing monthly class. I tried to set it up so kind of like how you would, go, like I used to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? And so you go every month, a couple times a week, and you practice skills and you build on your skills, right? So it's a monthly class. It's $500 a month. You can, come for 1 month and see where you go. And if you want to keep going in that direction, then you sign up for the next month. You're automatically enrolled month to month, but you can quit at any time that you want. And we also have a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you're like not sure and you want to like give it a try, but you realize, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing for me, we guarantee our resources. So, you really don't have anything to lose. Give it a try, see what you think. Okay, so Navee's asking if I'm going to offer it in October. Yeah, so it's an ongoing monthly class. So if you sign up now, you're good for a month. If you sign up the 10th of October, you're good for a month. So it's ongoing. We have critiques twice a week. The links for the critiques are inside the course platform that we have. And so when you sign up for the class, you get access to all the links for the critiques. If you can't make it to a live critique, then you can actually post your artwork. It's like a social media platform inside here. I can show you some pictures. So if you can't make it to a critique, you can post your image in the forum and you'll get a written critique in the forum. All right, so the whole point is to take you through a painting process. So the first project you do in the boot camp is a master copy. And I'm really big on teaching master copies as the first painting project, because think about how much you learned about color theory, right? And think of how much more there is to learn about color theory. And working on a master copy is one of the best ways to solidify that kind of knowledge. We have more than 15 video lessons that like are super, super detailed, where I'm teaching in very extended ways every stage of the process of making a master copy from beginning to end. And then of course you bring your works in progress to the critiques. You can post them in the forum and get feedback that way too. So somebody's asking, is it the same content from month to month? So basically all the videos are there that are like the core information of the class. So it's going to teach you all the most important painting techniques, how to set up your palette, extensive. You think that this was a lot of color theory in the painting bootcamp, it's even more extensive. You'll also have the opportunity to see critiques of other students' paintings as they progress, so that you can learn, from mistakes that your classmates are making. And so it's basically Atelier training. It's not like a class where everybody's learning the same thing at the same time all the time. Basically, we go through this first project together. It's the core of the class where I'm teaching you good painting techniques, how to control your paint, how to, mix strings on your palette, how to control your color theory, et cetera, et cetera. And then as students, like one of our students has done 3 or 4 master copies, and she started painting more, I guess her last one was like a landscape, right? But now that she has all the language that she needs, she's bringing in her landscape painting, and I'm able to give her appropriate feedback using a language that she understands. So the starting point is the master copy, but this class is for anybody that wants to improve their painting. It's just that until you adopt and learn the language and the Atelier models and the Atelier methods, that's what the video content is for. So you go through that first project, you do a master copy so that you have a firm understanding of the Atelier techniques, and then we take you from there into more independent projects. Okay, and I see some people saying, hey, I have a lot of questions to ask about some other things, but I want to ask you privately. That's fine. You can send me email to the School of Atelier Arts email address. You can contact through the online website. You can reach me at mandy@schoolofatelierarts.com. And I'm happy to answer questions all the time. But I also encourage you, if you have questions, I'm here right now. Like, ask. There's for every question that gets asked, that there's like 10 other students that are wondering and thinking the same thing. So be the brave one and put the ask out there. Okay, so in the Atelier Bootcamp, we are growing, and so right now I'm doing all the critiquing, but as we grow, I'm going to have other Atelier trained artists that I have worked with for years help with the critiquing and so on and so forth. So at least for now, one of the advantages of signing up early is that you are guaranteed to have me as your critiquer, and as we continue to expand our course offerings, we have an amazing group of people that we work with. They're all incredibly talented artists. And, the great thing about having a few different Atelier people too is that, I do my best to like break things down or whatever, but, other people have different ways of breaking things down. And so, especially if you're struggling with a concept, it's always good to hear it from a couple of different people that know what they're doing and have Atelier training. So Naveed's asking a really good question, like how many months does it take to really learn it? Well, at a master's level, so when I did my Atelier training, I trained all day, every day for about 5 years, more or less. All right. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to, I quit my job, moved across the country, waitress night shifts to get my Atelier training, right? It cost me tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And I really wish an option like this had existed for me, where I didn't have to put my entire life on hold to pursue it full time, that I could make meaningful progress in my drawing and painting in a more modest amount of investment, both financially, emotionally, because it's a lot. Like, think of how much we learned today, and think about the mental energy it's going to take to learn that. And so, having a program where you can work on your own a couple hours a week and get feedback a few times a week from an Atelier trained instructor without having to pay tens and tens of thousands of dollars and all those things. But it really is, the amount of time you put in is the amount of growth you'll get out, right? So let's say that you can devote, 10 hours a week to training, then, you're going to see some pretty significant progress in your work. Let's say that you don't have 10 hours a week. Let's say you can do like a half hour a morning before your kids wake up from school. Like you can still make meaningful progress as long as you have someone adjusting and helping you along the way, right? So Kristen's asking, if we sign up now, will you continue to have me as instructor as you add new instructors? So I never want to promise anything that I can't guarantee, but for the foreseeable future, I will be the primary instructor. However, all of our instructors, like those of you who've worked with me and know me, know how serious I take the ability to teach something and really value the pedagogy. Like I don't let just anybody that has Atelier training teach my students. They have to prove to me that they're good teachers. Like that's my number one criteria. So the other instructors that do work with me are incredible. They're really wonderful instructors. However, if you are really, if you feel a strong connection with my teaching style, I encourage you to sign up sooner than later, because at least for the foreseeable future, for the next few months, I will be the primary person running all of the critiques. So something, I know there's a lot of things to consider, and I know it's an investment, but again, it's like a bargain. $500 a month is it's such a good value. I cannot begin to describe how much I would have appreciated having access to a program like this when I was getting my Atelier training. Okay, so I told you it's $500 a month, sorry, I had a pop-up come. And what do you get for your investment? So I'm just going to kind of go over, the full thing, and I'm going to show you some pictures of inside. So we run this whole course inside of a online course software program, because it's not just about the training and it's not just about the critiques. It's the fact that, think of how much fun it was with all of you participating today and giving feedback and asking questions, and how much easier it is to stick to learning something new when you have people learning it with you and supporting you. And we have an incredibly supportive environment in our boot camp. So lots of great questions. So Bonnie is saying that she's watercolors for 20 years. Yes, absolutely. Bonnie, I started talking about this earlier, but drawing and painting realistically, the most important thing is training your eye to see better. Now, even if you're a watercolorist and you want to take this boot camp, I encourage you to just go through the boot camp with oil painting, just for the ease of learning this material. But every single thing you learn in there will apply to your watercolors. All the color theory, all the color mixing, all the processes for building up a painting that we teach. It's not like, it doesn't matter if it's watercolor or crayon or whatever. If your eye is trained well, that's what you're after. And that's what Atelier training is. It's like 99% training your eye, and the rest is the materials and the logistics of it, right? But you're not like learning the medium so much as you are learning how to see. So there's no minimum number of months. So Naveen's saying, do you have to sign up for a year or whatever? It's month to month. So like, let's say you're in a time in your life where you can really commit to training for 3 months, but then you have some things come up. Like, it's okay. Come train with us for 3 months. If things come up, we'll see you when you're able to come back, right? So there's no requirement. It's a 1 month commitment. You sign up and you get access for a month, and hopefully you'll like pack in all the learning and training. I found, so far, this is new, so we're still, getting used to what our norms are in there. But, that first month you learn so much that it's almost like an addiction, right? You're like, oh, now I see how much I can still learn. So fair warning, once you start Atelier training, once you really start to understand what you do know and what you don't know, you no longer tolerate what you don't know. Like it's something that, really is a lifelong pursuit. I think it was Leonardo da Vinci, when he was in his 80s, said, oh, if only I had 80 years, then I could learn how to paint, right? So, don't think of learning Atelier training as an end point. Think of it as a journey to help you in your own artwork, to help train your eye to see better, to help you appreciate the visual world that's around you. It's so much more than just drawing and painting realistically. It is a life-changing experience that will change the way you see the entire world, literally see the entire world. Okay, so yes, if you sign up now, I am the primary instructor right now with the group size that we have. Again, it's becoming very popular. We just launched it, and if it gets to the point where I feel like I can't reach everybody's critiques or give them as much input, I'm going to bring on my teammates as needed as the program grows. Oh, Naveed's saying that he was accepted by another program but couldn't relocate. And yeah, yeah. It's hard to have access to this training. Most people did have to move and relocate to get Atelier training. If you even learned that it existed, it was so hard to come by for most of the last century. And now, it's having this renaissance. The internet has been a great equalizer for bringing knowledge into the world. And it's really an incredible opportunity and moment for you to have access to something that, frankly, artists have not had access to for most of the last century, like over 100 years worth of people that maybe wanted this and wanted to pursue this and wanted to see better or saw those old master paintings in the museums, just didn't have a pathway to get there, but you do. Naveed, yes, you do get certificates. So, as you finish each project, you get a certificate for, the projects that you're finishing. So you'll when you finish your first master copy, you get like a certificate for your master copy. Okay, so this is a great question too. So, if you're recovering from an illness and can only paint for maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day, you can still make a lot of progress. We might need to come up with some accommodations for you because by the time you mix up your paint, that would be about your 15-minute max. But there's lots of ways that you can still learn and study. And, I'm an educator that specializes in teaching these skills. I'm sure that we can figure out how to accommodate your needs. And also, I know somebody that reached out to me recently who started learning Atelier training online through, I'm not sure where she started training, but she had a really bad back injury and she had to be on her back for 2 years, she said, and she was going crazy and she came across like some Atelier training and that's what she did. And she says that it saved her because she, it gave her something to do and learn, and it didn't require, some of the things that other types of activities would require. So there's definitely a lot you can do even within limitations. Like I know that she's a pretty darn good painter now, and she did it with a broken back, not being able to sit up. So it's a thing. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. People this is a very contemporary art problem that we think that, oh, we start in this corner and we go down here and then we have a finished painting at the end and we have to produce or it doesn't count. Think of how much you learned in this hour of training, right? And you could have easily broken this up into like 15-minute increments, right? And you would still learn a lot. Like you don't have to finish a painting to learn a lot. You can do like one little, like 1 inch of a painting and learn a ton from it, right? It's not a race, and it's not you against anybody else. Like Atelier training is the most personalized kind of training and learning I've ever experienced because everybody's on their own journey. There are some concepts people pick up really quickly, some concepts that they just struggle with. There's something called painting in grisaille, which is in painting in black and white. And maybe because I love colors so much, it just sucked my soul out. Like I struggled so much learning how to paint in black and white. It was like the hardest thing for me. And my classmates, there was no problem for them. They all got it, but you have to remember to swim in your own lane and to focus on your own art journey. And as long as you're learning something every day, like that's magical. Like that changes your life, and that's for you. And when you have this training, when you have this knowledge, nobody can ever take it from you. Like what you've learned today, how you're seeing color, you're going to see those colors the rest of your life. Like you can't unsee what you now know. You can't unknow this amazing magical way of evaluating colors in your life. It's with you forever. So, obviously I think Atelier training is this amazing, wonderful thing, or I wouldn't dedicate my life, to helping others learn it. But it's really powerful. It's hard to describe how life-changing this can be. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And oh yeah, I haven't even told you what's in the program yet. I'm just like, but art is amazing. I love art. I hope you love art too. So like I said, you get 2 critiques. There's 15 extensive video lessons in there. And I think if you've gone through this color theory with me, you know how like much of a deep dive I can go into things. So there's nothing that we cover in here that doesn't get covered completely. I also include a master copy bundle in there because just because we start with master copies, not all master copies are going to help you learn efficiently, right? There are some master copies that are better to start off with than others. And I've learned through experience that it's much better to have a well-curated selection to help students experience success, especially with their first master copy, before letting them go out into the wild world of art and choose all these like random things that could be extraordinarily challenging for their first master copy. So it's a very curated collection for you to start off with. We also cover how to set up your studio safety, how to print your master copies, how to prep your palette the right way. Those of you who were in the workshop yesterday know that there's a lot more than just putting paint on your palette, right? And so we cover everything in depth, and we have a lot of great handouts for you. And also with each of the video lessons too, there's a whole slide lesson that you can download for every video lesson. And the idea behind that is, okay, you watch the video lesson, you hear me, whatever, but when you are going to paint, it's helpful to have a slide guide, at the different stages. So I include the slide lessons there that you can download so that you always know what your next step is in your painting. Okay, and this is what the course platform looks like on the inside, just so you can kind of get an idea. So we have the course materials, at the top here. That's where all the videos are. The written critiques, it's like your favorite social media platform. You can upload an image, you can type some questions in there, and you can get feedback from Atelier trained instructors in a written format if you can't come to the live critiques. We have the live critiques. So in that section, you have all the links to our live critique sessions. And you can, join in there. We're all on camera. You show us your work. We laugh, we have fun, and most importantly, we learn a whole lot of art. And we also keep a critique library. So a lot of the learning that happens isn't happening from your painting. It's happening because your fellow classmates have questions that you didn't think of to ask, or are having a problem with your painting that you're also having and you didn't recognize it yet. So we keep a critique library. So that you can, have ongoing learning experiences. And, we have that core set of videos, but then we also include all the critiques in there. And then also there's a chat feature. So you can individually chat with any of your instructors. You can individually chat with me in the chat feature. You can chat with each other. So, you might notice, oh, Susie's from New York City and Billy's from New York City. Maybe they want to like paint together or something, so you can reach out to your classmates and get to know your classmates, because it really does. People think, oh, learning is just about learning, but learning in a community, we know produces better results. We know that's what the research tells us. So, not having to do it all on your own, not like sitting in isolation, like trying to figure it out all on your own, having instructors that can help you, having classmates cheering you on, learning from your classmates. It's all part of what makes this program particularly successful for teaching people how to paint. All right, so these are all the things in there. If you're interested in signing up for the boot camp, you can do so. I did post the link that's floating around. I believe it's on your lower left-hand side. You can also type in the link here. And if you do choose to enroll, so you'll go from the sign up page and it'll take you into the course platform. You can create an account first, and then it'll let you enroll in our boot camp from there. And yes, they're saying that 80% of undergraduate learning in a professor system is true. Like, we learn a lot from each other. So, having a competent guide, having someone with good teaching theory that can break things down for you in an accessible way, and having your community. These are all, we know that these are key elements of learning. And that's what you get in this class. Oh, thank you, Jacqueline. Jacqueline says, thank you for these superb classes, and you've been wonderful, and I know what they are. Yay! Half of the battle is just knowing it exists, right? Like, I didn't know for many years, and had I known, I would have gone a decade earlier, right? But wherever you are, wherever you're learning, it's available to you. It's a choice you can make when you're ready to make it. Yes, I will. Greta's asking if I can send the link to the video out. Yes, you may have noticed you've been getting a lot of emails from me this week because we've had classes every day. So I'm a little behind on sending out the replays, but next week I'll be organizing and cleaning them up and sending them out to everybody. So again, we do have scholarship, need-based scholarships available. If you just write to scholarship at School of Atelier Arts, you can be considered for one, and I'll put that in the chat. I'm second guessing myself. I don't remember if it's scholarship or scholarships. I don't know if it's singular or plural. So if one gets turned back to you, try the other one. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, so some of you are saying, oh, I missed the other classes. I try to, because we have such an international audience, the School of Atelier Arts, I mean, we have enormous followings in the Philippines, in India, in the US, in the Nordic countries, so I've been trying to stagger the times to be in different times and days to figure out what works, but this class seems to be the most popular. Like having it what's Sunday at 2 p.m. my time in New York City time seems to be working well for everybody. So I think in the future I'll be planning for something more like this. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? I've kept you a half hour later. You guys are the overachievers. You're the ones that are like, yeah, I'm going to learn more. I'm not ready to go. Thank you, Annette. I appreciate that. I really value, it's not just the skills, it's, the pedagogy matters, teaching it matters, and how you share information. Like you can share it efficiently or inefficiently, right? And you want your students to have the least frustrating experience and have the most wins along the way that you can get. And so I really arrange the courses as much as possible so that you have those like small wins that build into big wins. Oh yes, I'm almost out of words. Someone's teasing me saying that, boy, I can talk. Yes, there's too much to share, too much to know. Okay. Oh, thank you, Laura. I look forward to seeing you in the Atelier Bootcamp too. I'm so excited for all of you to be here. I'm so happy that we were able to work together today, and I hope to see you as future students in the bootcamp.